Students, today we will start with 18 FT 504 Quality Assurance in Garment Production. We are at Unit 2 and we are talking about quality standards, systems and inspection agencies. We have already covered 3 lessons on this particular unit and we have seen different quality standards. First, we have started with US and Europe standards. Those are basically the testing standards. Then we talked about quality management systems and also we talked about some sort of certifications and different systems of certifications, both quality management and environmental management. Now today we will do a particular lesson, that is lesson 4, and that will speak about the social compliance. Now, why social compliance is important in the garment industry? Because buyer-driven industry, always the buyers want that all the social accountability norms must be fulfilled, like the work, health and safety issues, wages, and so on and so forth. So let us see that in social compliance, what are the important areas that is really beneficial for the garment industry. Students, can you see this is the picture? Can you identify? I hope this is a very well-known picture to you. This is a garment industry. Some of the sewing machines are shown here, and in this particular area, we first will talk about a particular social compliance kind of certification system or a standard, you can call it as, and that is called as RAP. And full form of RAP, as you can see, that it is worldwide responsible accredited production and safe, lawful, humane and ethical manufacturing around the world it talks about. Now basically when RAP is there, we talk about the independent approach of this, independent approach of the particular factory and particular organization. Now when we talk about the RAP, what is RAP? It is basically a non-profit organization, okay? And this particular organization will be monitored by RAP, and there the manufacturing industries will be covered. The manufacturing industry, when I am talking, it may not be only applicable for the case of apparel, but also various other industries, even the steel industry or the leather industry, ceramic industry, any kind of industry will be covered. Wherever the manufacturing is there, the RAP principles can be applied. RAP principle talks about the social accountability, social compliance norms. So that is why the manufacturing industry, how is the working condition inside the factory, how the laborers are working there, what is their work culture there, how much wages they get it, whether they are doing any overtime, all these things are covered under this RAP. Now RAP, when you are talking, how the RAP has come into picture. You see, the RAP is been established in 2000 and it is not an independent bodies which have really established this. That was an association called American Apparel and Footwear Association. That particular association was the key organization who has actually established this RAP based on their experience in their association, the industry which are associated with them. So that is Apparel and Footwear Association. RAP principles, when we are talking how RAP works, that is very important to understand. It is basically a standard, and this standard, when you are talking, this standard is applicable throughout the world, any of the factories or any of the organizations, it can be applied. Now let us see that in the apparel industry, how it is getting really established, or how one apparel industry can be evaluated by the RAP principles. Now students, you may ask questions why RAP is required for apparel industry. It is not only to establish the social accountability norms inside the factory, or to establish the good working conditions inside the factory, but above all, it is the buyer's requirement. Buyer wants to place order to those factories which are accredited factory under the RAP, okay, under the RAP principles. So that's why RAP principles are very important to understand. Let us see how it will be implemented and what are the basic principles are associated with RAP. Now basically RAP talks about the factory conditions. What is the condition inside the factory? As we can see that there is a factory, garment factory of course, okay, people are working, and if you cleanly observe, you can see that a lot of health and safety issues have been taken care of inside the factory. There is good lighting inside the factory, there is a distance between the people, they are using certain kind of personal protective equipment. So many things are there inside this particular figure. So that is the condition of the factory by which it works. And those things which are not visible here is that like a lot of health and safety issues which are there, like a fire extinguisher, okay, then first aid box, then sufficient toilet facilities, then drinking water facilities. Those are all coming under the factory conditions. We'll see one by one how it works. Now apart from this, RAP is very unique in the sense that it takes care of, unlike other social compliance norms, it takes care of environment also and the customs compliance. Okay, this is very important because when we are going to ship any product, so customs clearance is required. So customs compliance also is taken care of by the RAP principles. So these are unique principles under RAP which are not there in many different social accountability standard. So that's why RAP is worldwide acceptable, okay, worldwide acceptable, and it is called worldwide responsible accredited production. So that is the full form of RAP. And who are there in this RAP? Lot of manufacturing associations and member manufacturing companies are associated in this certification program. It is a very prestigious program also. When a company is certified under RAP, then this company's moral getting increased. We'll see that in different advantages when the factory is really accredited with the RAP, okay. Not only they secure the order, but company's moral, company's activity, company's image, profit, everything increases when such kind of certification is there under social accountability. Let us see students that under this RAP certification programs, what are the important points associated with this program by which the certification can be achieved in a factory. This is practically very important to understand because when a buyer comes to the factory for any auditing under the RAP principles, so that particular buyer will see all these points which are there as a clause kind of thing in this program or the principles. Now students, what are those principles by which the RAP accreditation can be obtained in a factory? This is very important. There are 12 universally accepted RAP production principles which are there. Now let us see one by one what are the different production principles which are really applied to it. Now this apparel certification program or the principles, okay, it talks about independent monitoring. Independent monitors are there who monitors this program, okay, the RAP certification program, and this is also involved that different best practices and procedures that will be applied to it in this certification program. So best practice and procedures are very important in this apparel certification program under the RAP. Okay. Now we cannot ignore the laws and regulations of the country also when the RAP principles are applied. Compliance with the laws and the workplace regulations are very important, that's why. And laws and regulations may vary from country to country. Okay, like a wage structure may vary. Then there are certain norms of overtime wages. Okay, so those things may vary, like a bonus. So such kind of activities may vary depending upon the country. So that's why countries where the actual factory is located, so in that country's laws and regulations are very important in case of RAP. And that also plays an important role in the RAP principles. Now, one of the very major principles or very important principles where this RAP works is the prohibition of forced labor. What do you mean by forced labor? It is not voluntary, okay. Now, involuntary will not use involuntary or forced labor, okay. Suppose somebody has come to any foreign country for working. So, any factory, what normally they do, they take their passport, okay, so that that particular person cannot go outside the factory, and the factory management will force him to do the work inside the factory, whatever they want, how many hours they want. So that is the forced labor principles. And the labor which is working inside the factory, he comes there for earning money, okay. So he becomes actually victimized, he is victimized about the forced labor conditions. So factory actually should not use involuntarily or forced labor conditions. Now another principles of RAP which talks about the prohibition of child labor. What do you mean by that? You know, the child labor always plays an important role in any kind of social accountability principles. Now age is very, very important. A particular factory should not employ any kind of labor whose age is not covering under the minimum age established by law in that country, okay. Because certain age that compulsory education is required, okay. And at that age, if a particular child goes into the work, so he is the victimized or she is the victimized as a child labor. And as per the law, these child laborers are not permitted inside any factory under certain restrictions, okay. So different age limits are there, normally 14 years and below ages, they are normally called as child labor. And there are various areas where child laborers are employed, not only in the factory, garment factory, but also in various other disciplines also, like a leather industry, carpet industry. So many other industries are there where these child laborers are playing a major role. So a lot of child laborers are available. But if you want the factory to be complied with these social accountability norms, then it is prohibited. Child labor should not be employed inside the factory. Because this child labor actually becomes the victim of the socio-economic conditions of that country. Their parents cannot earn money or their financial condition is not good. So they send their children to work in the factory. But the factory people has to really look at it, that whether he will be employed or she will be employed in the factory or not. If he or she is employed, then it is a violation of child labor norms. And this has been internationally recognized also by International Labour Organization, ILO. Different clauses are there for that to prohibit such kind of child labor. Students, can you identify what is this? It is the harassment or abuse, okay. So RAP principles also talks about this prohibition of harassment or abuse in the garment factory. This is very common inside a garment factory, especially in the third world countries, where this harassment or abuse is always there inside a garment factory. But RAP principle says that if there is any evidence of this harassment or abuse, this kind of act is prohibited under the RAP principles. So that factory will not get the certification under the RAP if there is the evidence of harassment or abuse inside a factory. Now question comes, how it will be detected inside a factory? Now there is no record of harassment or abuse, but any auditor who comes or the buyer who comes for auditing any factory, he or she can interview some of the workers, female workers, and really it can be found that whether there is harassment is there or abuse is there. So that's why harassment or abuse is prohibited. So that work environment inside the garment factory should be free from harassment. Okay, the condition of working should be very lot of you see that chaos should not be there. There will be no relationship inside the factory will work. Okay, so it is a free of harassment. The situation will be like that inside the garment factory. Okay, suppose somebody cannot work properly, so no harassment should be there. He or she should be trained properly. So that top management has to look into it, and there is a special cell also inside the factory to look into it. There are also a lot of counselors are there inside a garment working line. So they also see all this that should comply with this RAP regulations, so that buyer will satisfy if there is no such kind of harassment is there inside a factory. Now abuse or corporal punishment should not be there in the factory. What do you mean by that, corporal punishment? Now this is nothing but, suppose some worker he or she cannot give the production correctly. Okay, so there should not be any practices like his or her salary should not be cut. Okay, he should not be forcefully or compelled to work late also after the working hours. He should not leave the factory until and unless the work is getting completed. So many other things are also there. Abusing languages sometimes people use inside the factory. So those kind of any form of abuse or corporal punishment should not be there inside a factory. So that RAP principle talks about prohibition of harassment or abuse. Students, can you identify what is this? Yes, this is nothing but some dollars. But how it is related to the RAP principles? Let us see. That talks about compensation and benefits. Okay, compensation and benefits, how it is related with this RAP principles. Let us see. You see that minimum total compensation must be paid to the worker who are working inside the factory. We call it as a minimum total compensation for his work or her work inside a factory. And all mandated wages must be paid. Okay, so these are the compensation and benefits, and this is again controlled by the law of that country. Different countries, they are having their own laws that how much should be the minimum wage or minimum compensation. It varies between country to country, and a vast country like India, different states are there. So even in different states also this compensation varies and benefits varies. So that is why the compensation and benefits are really regulated by the local laws and regulations. Now there is a question, students, that when you are talking about minimum total compensation, whether it will satisfy the requirement of that particular country. That's why the terminology called living wages come. Many of the cases it has been seen, the living wages are much more higher than the minimum total compensation. So if such is the case, then it is very difficult to live their livelihood. In that case, many of the companies, they also provide not only the minimum wages but also more than that amount to take care of the living wages of that country. That is much more important than the minimum total compensation. So living wages must be paid according to these, so that the workers can comfortably work in the factory. So that is the compensation and benefits, and all the mandated wages must be given. And there are certain regulations that will also tell what are the different other benefits are associated with this compensation. Now this compensation and benefit also talks about allowance, different allowances and benefits. Allowances and benefits are different, means like any company is paying some overtime, okay, and overtime allowance we call it as, or any company is paying certain kind of bonus. So those are called the benefits inside the factory. Again, this varies from country to country. Okay, like in Bangladesh, if you see, there are two major festivals, Muslim festivals are there. So in those two Muslim festivals, they are giving some sort of monetary benefits to the workers, and that is in the form of different kind of you can see that it is like festival allowance or festival benefits kind of thing. So those kind of benefits are given in that country. Countries like India, there is one Diwali is there, so there some monetary benefits are passed on to these workers. Okay, so those are the monetary benefits or the festival benefits, okay, festival offers. So all these things are giving to the workers as a part of the benefit under RAP principles. Okay, and allowance means it is definitely allowance due to the overtime or any other allowance if factory wants to create, like the facilities of transport facilities or transport allowance. So that can also be treated as a compensation. So the festival benefits or festival, you can see that compensation you can be given as a benefit. Festival bonus we call it as normally in the factory, and the allowances are also given as a benefit to the workers. Students, can you recognize from these images what we will try to mean in RAP principles, which is very important? It is nothing but the time, it is showing the time, okay. So that talks about hours of work. It is very important to understand. Now there are some legal limitations are there inside a country, and that limitation talks about that how many hours a worker will work inside the factory. Normally it is 8 hours and 1 day off in every 7 days. That is the hours of work that is permitted in the factory atmosphere. Now students, is that all in hours of work? Because in case of apparel manufacturing units, we always cannot stick onto the time. There are a lot of other factors come into the play, like late receival of order from the buyer, or there is some unrest in the factory, some sort of you can see that flood or earthquake or any other kind of unexpected events happened. So legal disturbances inside the country or the political unrest inside the country, that can also happen. So all these can really affect the real working hours. Okay, So after 8 hours, then some companies has to work to compensate that. So those kind of work also is coming under these legal aspects of hours of work in the country, and in that case the overtime comes into play. Okay, so factory management has to pay for the overtime wages for that. So it is a normal wages and the overtime wages, both are there and both are covered under these hours of work. And when you are talking about that, we will see later on in some other standards that how it is getting regulated by the country's norms. Let us see another important principles of the RAP principles, that is the prohibition of discrimination. Now students, what do you mean by discrimination? This is again some article 15 of the regulatory act that covers that, and employment, payment, promotion, termination of the workers, these are different areas. Example is that employment, suppose a particular company is employing from certain areas, okay, or a particular company is employing only the male workers, or a particular company is employing the female workers and the conditions that if there is a kind of marriage is there of that, so she has to leave the job. Okay. Now if a company's restriction also is there, if a particular female is pregnant, she cannot be can be employed, this opportunity should not be there. So those are all things coming under the discrimination. Sometimes the factory also pay higher wages to the male workers rather than the female, that should not be happen. Promotion also, suppose some factory manager is belonging to certain area, he wants to promote the workers belonging to that area, promotion can be given. That is also a discrimination. Similar case happen for termination of the workers. So in that case also the factory takes different situation. Okay, they can terminate the workers who are coming for a particular zone, or terminate the workers about a particular gender. So all sorts of things are coming under the discrimination. So those are the things actually should not be permitted inside a factory. That's why the RAP principle talks about prohibition of discrimination. This is again a particular kind of terminology which cannot be properly justified through only documentations. Okay, so documentation cannot prove this, but yes, during the individual interview of the factory workers, it can be revealed. Okay, individual can reveal this to the auditors, and auditors may understand that yes, there is some discrimination inside the factory. So all these things which are documented or non-documented, the source of evidence of proving the discrimination, and which is really taken care of in the sustainable goals also. The 17 sustainable development goals in the world which has been promoted by UN, this also covers that prohibition of discrimination. Now students, there are a lot of issues of health and safety inside a garment factory. What may be those areas? Health and safety. Now health and safety inside a garment factory can be many things, like the first aid treatment inside the factory. There are that if there is a fire extinguishers must be there inside the factory for any kind of fire related issues. So lot of such benefits or lot of such health issues are there inside the factory. Proper drinking water should be there, sufficient number of toilets should be there inside the factory. Factory management should give proper personal protective equipment to the workers. These are all coming under the health and safety issues. Okay, that is I am talking about inside the factory when they are working. Okay, so health and safety at the workplace. Now some of the factories, they also provide some housing or the dormitories to the workers. So health and safety issues are equally applied to those housing areas or dormitories. So sufficient toilet must be there also. Health and safety aspects should be taken care of. Proper hygiene in the toilet must be maintained. Okay. So those are all coming under the health and safety issues. Health and safety issue also covers in case of emergency, how a worker will evacuate from either from the workplace or from the dormitories or housing provided to them. So the emergency evacuation plan, that is also coming under these health and safety issues. So those kind of provisions, there are a number of such provisions which are there. So that must be really taken care of in the different 12 principles of RAP. Now students, a very important part of any kind of social accountability norms is the freedom of association and collective bargaining. Now students, what do you mean by freedom of association and what is the meaning of collective bargaining? These are a part of parcel of a garment factory by which the different workers' benefits, rights are presented to the management. Now individually, if anybody approaches to the management, it may not be successful. But if a group approaches for their benefits or for their different kind of demands which are there, okay, demand normally comes from the wages, benefits, etc. So those are the things actually must be collectively, they must go to the management and do that work. Now how to do this? From that only the freedom of association and collective bargaining has started. Here the recognition and respect the right of the employees are very important. Okay. For that, the freedom of association and the collective bargaining plays a major role. A factory management cannot prohibit the workers to form an union or form any association. It is their basic right. Okay. And it is also their basic rights that their certain kind of demand kind of thing, or demand on the working conditions, demand on the wages, that also must be bargained with the management. So that is the called as collective bargaining. Okay. So a union or working group will be formed, and by which they will collectively present their cases to the management. So that is called collective bargaining. It has good strength when we do the collective bargaining under the social accountability norms or principles, because any kind of social accountability norms or standards, they support this, that freedom of association and collective bargaining. A factory management, in all practical purposes, they may not like this. Okay. But it is a legal right for the workers. Factory management do not like this because it puts an additional pressure on them to give lot of benefits, wages and all these things. And it's good for the workers because they can collectively express their thoughts about their working conditions, their benefits, all these areas. That is the reason the freedom of association and collective bargaining is very important here, and it must be implemented inside a RAP certified factory. There must be suitable evidences should be there for proving that yes, there is some union is there or some association is there inside a factory who approach to the management on these dates. So those are the practical benefits or practical approaches that should be there, and it can be documented also. So documentation will prove that is in the factory such kind of environment is there for collective bargaining and formation of union kind of thing, the association. So those are the part and parcel of this particular factory wherein RAP principles are really applied. Okay. So it is basically different types of collective bargaining is there, but basic principle is to reach an agreement regarding the rights and duties of the people at work, okay, as is shown in the figure. So that is the way actually this goes, collective bargaining. And very interesting part of this collective bargaining is that there must be a win-win situation. What is that win-win situation? That the proposal which is coming from the factory, that must benefit both the factory workers and also to the management. Okay. So such kind of win-win situation must be created inside the factory, and collective bargaining methodology must support that. Okay. Then only it will be really helpful for the employee and the employer. Now, environment, it plays also a major role in the RAP principles. You see that we have seen already the ISO 14001, which really talks about the environmental management system. So country specific, there will be the rules and regulations of a country also is there. Okay. For an example, a particular factory is discharging certain chemicals in the form of effluent. Okay. So there are certain norms are there. How much BOD level, how much pH, how much COD level, how much TDS level, all these things are there. So that is called the environmental regulations or the rule, how much you will discharge into the environment. These are for example. Now, interestingly, the countries like India, there are different states, they are having different environmental regulations or the parameters which are there, or the limits of those parameters. Okay. So pollution control board of different states, they cover into that. So the particular factory must be governed by such environmental rules and regulations, okay, to satisfy the RAP principles. And the standards must be applicable to their operations. In that fashion, the like environmental standard 14001. So that must be applicable to different operations which are happening inside the factory. So that is the environment. Environment part is also taken care of by the RAP principle. So then let us see that is there any other norms or any other principles which are associated with the RAP. Because so far what we have told, these are all associated inside a garment factory. Okay. Whether we will take the working conditions, health and safety issues, then wages, okay, and finally the environment, all are really talking about the inside a garment factory, how it works. Okay. Now there is additional things are also there in the RAP principles. One of them is customs compliance. Now students, what do we mean by customs compliance? Okay. Now a factory produces the goods and those goods must be shipped to certain other countries depending upon the order where the buyer is situated. So customs clearance is must for that goods. Okay. Many of the cases you have heard the name in a factory that the bonded warehouse. Okay. That means from that warehouse you cannot take the goods out until and unless it is satisfy the customs regulations, or some customs representative must certify that yes, this material is going out for this purpose. So that is called custom bonded warehouse. This is an examples of the custom compliance. So anybody by their own liking, even the management cannot take out the goods from the warehouse, okay, because it is custom bonded warehouse. That is the reason the customs compliance is very important here. Rules and regulations of the customs applicable for that country is to be respected in this RAP principles. Okay. So this is very much important for the export oriented goods. The custom clearance is required. Now students, can you identify what is this? This is a picture of different ships, how it is related to the RAP principles. customs compliance, it is related to the principles of this RAP because illegal transshipment of apparel products do happen in the industry. Now, what do you mean by transshipment? Okay. Now, sometimes it happens in the garment industry that a garment is produced in a particular country, okay, and that particular country is producing all the parts of the garment except a label, okay. Now, due to certain benefits, some countries benefit, sometimes duty-free benefits, some other benefits, okay. So, a particular country send the goods to that country, their representative, and here see puts a label on the garment of that particular country, okay, so that the particular factory will get some benefit out of it, like a duty-free structure or kind of other benefits also. Some different countries they are having different benefits, okay. So, those kind of benefits, in order to attract, sometimes a particular country, that particular factory, they send the goods to that country where the representatives are there, where the duty-free facilities are available to export to US or Europe kind of thing. Especially for the Europe, it is very much applied, okay. So, that particular management of that particular country gives a different label, country of origin changes. Suppose the goods have been produced in Bangladesh, but the label is from Vietnam, because country of origin they give the label as Vietnam because of certain benefits they attract, okay. So, that is called illegal transshipment of apparels, that must be prohibited, okay. So, customs compliance is not fulfilled when such kind of situation occurs. Illegal transshipment, that is why in under customs compliance. Students, what do you mean by CTPAT? This also is coming under the customs compliance, and this is actually formed by US Customs and Border Protection, CBP, and there is a particular initiative is taken by Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. When the terrorism actually has really affect the US, okay, that 11th September incident, and in that time the US government thought about this CTPAT, okay. Though this is a voluntary program, but this is basically to combat the terrorism internationally, okay. So, any goods which are entering into US, that time the CTPAT was applied to it. So, Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. So, CTPAT is applied to that particular country also from where the goods are coming. Though it is a voluntary program, but yes, it is to combat the terrorism internationally. So, that is also coming under the customs compliance, especially in US, and the authority is US Customs and Border Protection, okay. CTPAT is applied because sometimes some country is sending some material to US, okay, some goods which have been ordered to that particular factory. So, if they send the goods, so CTPAT will be applied to it, okay. Many things will be checked before they will be shipped from that country. So, that is covered under CTPAT and also covered under the customs compliance. So, this is an important part of the principles of RAP also. Now, students, the picture says it is a security, okay. Lock means it is a security. So, security procedures must be maintained inside a particular RAP accredited factory. Different security procedures are there, like I am talking about the customs bonded warehouse. There must be security in both the areas, okay, and those procedures like entering into that area, coming out into this area, then how much time the person spends into that area. So, all are coming under the security procedures. So, that must be maintained in the particular factory. Similar thing is for the CTPAT. Okay, so CTPAT areas also where it is covered under this customs. So there also such kind of security procedures must be maintained. So that is coming under the RAP principles. Now participating organizations, who are the participating organizations? So they must participate into this RAP program, subscribe to it and promote this, that yes, RAP principles are really very good for our country. Participated organization can be apparel and footwear industry, or many other organizations are also associated in this RAP principle. Now, how it is important? The RAP, what are the merits of RAP? Definitely there are certain benefits associated because it is market driven approach and high standards are maintained. High standards, when I am talking about high standards of social accountability norms. It is market driven because if the RAP principles are applied to the factory or RAP accredited factory, so they get the benefit in the order. Okay. So the market driven approach is there in the RAP principles. Okay. So that's why RAP principles are market driven and high standards are maintained in this principle. Now what is this, student? Can you identify? Now this is independent from the industry. How? Because RAP principles, whether it has been really applied or really has been established inside the factory, that must be monitored by some other agencies, okay? Some accredited agency who are authorized to do the RAP audit. So this is independent from the agency or from the industry where the goods are getting produced. So a particular representative from a factory cannot accredit his own factory that this is the RAP accredited factory. So it is independent from the factory. There are also other advantages associated with RAP because this is a factory based approach. Inside the factory, how these principles are getting applied. So that's why the RAP is basically a factory based approach or factory based principles are there. Apart from that, it eliminates the duplication, okay? Duplication of any kind of or any form, it really eliminates in the RAP principles, okay? Duplication of another factory you cannot do. Their working principles you cannot apply in this fashion. Your factory will be an unique factory. Eliminates the duplication of process and procedure. Advantages of RAP principles inside a factory also talks about the productivity. When these RAP principles are applied, working conditions of the workers are improved. They get the better wages, benefits and other allowances, etc. Then the morale of the factory workers will also increase. They get the security from the management also. There is no discrimination inside the factory, no corporal punishment. So if that is the situation inside the factory, so workers will feel very confident in working inside the garment factory. So ultimately their productivity will increase, efficiency of work will increase. So that is also one of the advantages of RAP, increase of productivity. And if such is the condition inside the factory, the workers actually going out from the factory or the lower turnover is one of the indication of good principles inside the factory. So workers will stay in that particular factory, work for a longer time, lower turnover because of that. So this is also one of the advantages of the RAP principles. Now there is also improvement in the communication between the management and employees because there is the principles also that collective bargaining, this is established inside the factory. So that's why communication and management both are improved between the management people and also the employees. So better communications between management and employees is important. And also the safe and more secure working conditions, because RAP principles are applied to it, health and safety issues are taken care of and all the benefits are taken care of. Workers can work inside the factory very safely. That's why it is a safer and secure working condition inside the factory. So that is also one of the advantages of RAP. I was talking about workers' morale. Because of all these reasons adding together, it will improve the workers' morale, and this is also one of the advantages of RAP. Now in case of certification, suppose any factory wants to certify with the RAP principles, what has to be applied? Step 1 is the application. The factory has to apply for the certification on this particular principles, RAP principles, to a particular organizations who are accredited or authorized organizations. Then there is also a procedure called self-assessment. The factory must assess themselves. So that is the step 2 in certification under the RAP. Self-assessment, when you are doing, you can understand the 12 principles, whether it is correctly employed inside the factory or not. Is there any deviation? If there is a deviation, some corrective action must be taken into that. So all things are coming under the self-assessment criteria. Then the monitoring of all the areas where these RAP principles are there. So 12 principles when it is getting established inside the factory. So monitoring of each of these principles, whether it is correctly established inside a particular garment factory or not, that needs to be monitored by a group of people. Step 3, that is. Now finally it comes the evaluation. The evaluation of a particular organization who are really recognized for giving the RAP audit certificate, that yes, everything is under the following the 12 principles of RAP. So that is getting evaluated, okay, under these 12 principles. And finally, if everything is okay according to the auditors, then RAP certifies a factory. That is called the certification inside the factory. So this is students, one of the certificate that yes, it is a very good company has been certified under the RAP principle. So that certificate is very, very important tool, and not only from the workers point of view or employees point of view, but also it is useful for the business of the employer, because this will increase the image of that factory and they will get better orders, okay, and profit margin of that company will increase. So these are the advantages of this RAP certification, and any kind of deviations or the gap between these different principles, so that must be assessed periodically and must be monitored, and corrective action must be taken into this. So that it talks about purpose and scope. Different policies must be implemented for that purpose. It should be developed, maintained and enforce such policies while this principles of RAP is getting established. Then the factory must demonstrate that skill or demonstrate that ability to maintain that different 12 principles of RAP, the demonstration. Then what are the requirements are there? So in order to establish that, so those requirements are also getting fulfilled. So that is also the purpose and scope, and different requirements which are really required for this RAP principles implementations, that must be really documented. So the documentation is very important for that purpose. And finally, the management must have some aims, okay, so that also to achieve these RAP principles, that what is the aim of that, okay, what is the aim, where this factory wants to go. So that actually is also getting established by these RAP principles. So aim of the factory must be fulfilled by getting the RAP certification. So that is, students, about the RAP principles, how it is getting employed inside the factory, how it is getting established, and what are the benefits a factory can get. Now we will talk little bit about SA8000, which is also very useful certification standards, and that is also somewhat similar to the principles of RAP. And SA8000 actually is a very well known area. SA8000 is a social accountability standard developed in 1989, okay, and it was really developed by SAI, that is Social Accountability International, or previously it was Council on Economic Priorities, and it is basically a board of trade unions, NGOs and other organizations and companies, and they talk about the social accountability norms. Normally it covers about human rights, okay. Implementation of international human right norms are associated with this SA8000, and there are a lot of social compliance issues are there. These are the photographs of different social compliance issues. This particular photograph talks about the child labor inside a garment factory in Bangladesh. Under SA8000 audit, people have found child labor, and this particular factory then was taking some actions against that, against the child labor. Then there are the issues of the forced labor also, like we previously described in RAP principle. Forced labor also is there. There are the instances of deviation from health and safety issues. As you can see in this picture, that particular cutting machine operator, he has not used the metal hand gloves. So that is also one of the deviation or non-compliance, okay. So social compliance issues under SA8000 also talks about freedom of association and collective bargaining, as we have already discussed in the 12 principles in RAP. SA8000 also talks about discrimination, okay, as we have mentioned that different groups of people, different age of people, color of the people, so gender of the people, so all these things are coming under the discrimination part. Then disciplinary practices also must not be there inside SA8000 norms, so that is covering the disciplinary practices. Working hours, yes, SA8000 also talks about working hours, how much should be the minimum or the legal working limit, that is mentioned. And salary must be maintained, that remuneration must satisfy the local requirement, okay, but the wages what are to be paid, that must be complied with the regulation. And SA8000 talks about the management systems, which talks about the different safety issues, health issues, so that is also taken care by the factory. And certification under SA8000 is also possible. So certification can be done when all the basic principles of SA8000 is getting fulfilled, okay. So there will be the audit program. Through that audit only, this accredited certification body will audit the factory and they will give the certification under SA8000. So that is the certification system under SA8000. A group of auditors will visit the factory premises and they will observe certain things, documents they will verify, then they will take the interviews of the working classes, and then they will do some closing meetings in the factory, and if the factory is complying with all the legal norms or the regulations or the principles of SA8000, they will certify that particular factory. So that is the way actually social compliance issues that we have covered today. We have talked about RAP, okay, RAP principles, 12 principles of RAP. We have also seen the different principles of SA8000. Almost they are similar in nature. Only the additional thing which is covered under RAP principles is that customs, security and the environment part, okay. So those are the additional parts which are covered under the RAP. But basically this kind of social accountability norms are there to improve the workers' working conditions inside the factory, and also the any kind of accommodation if it is really given to them for the benefits. So that there also this kind of health and safety issues must be maintained. There must be proper drinking water facility. Then in case of emergency measures must be there. Factory drilling, that is the fire drill kind of approaches must be maintained there. People should be trained into this first aid activity, first aid, different operations of first aid inside the factory, and lot of other benefits which are there inside the factory as per the norms, legal norms of that particular country, like a working hours, the benefits, the living wages, overtimes. So all these things must be maintained inside the factory to satisfy the social accountability norms. So students, that is the end of this particular unit 2. We will come with a new topic in unit 3. Thank you very much.